wouldn't want to admit it, but or maybe it's been the other way around. You thought they had the most awful job, and it turned out to be perfect. But have you ever done any? It doesn't have to be a job, but maybe you did something. You thought you were in a brilliant place, and then it all just turned to dust in front of your very, very own eyes. So let's talk about the employment of somebody like David Moyes with an expert. Romella Manning-Brown is a senior associate and employment specialist at Fox Williams. You better tell us what you do, Romella.
Hello.
Hello.
So I advise both senior executives, people who are under close scrutiny, CEOs at banks and financial institutions, and also sort of both poacher come gamekeeper employers of those sorts of individuals as well. So negotiate contracts in and out in these sorts of situations.
Right, so tell us the sort of contract that David Moyes might have been on and some of the sort of intricacies of it.
Well, of course, I haven't been involved in his situation,
No.
but what I do imagine is that he would have had a very carefully negotiated contract. His lawyers will have been all over it at the time, as will Manchester United's, and it will set out general things such as obviously all of his pay, his bonuses, the term of the contract, other obligations like confidentiality, making sure that the privacy of the players, etc. He'll have to be tied up with all of that. But then there'll also be very significant clauses, and it will be a big chunk of the agreement. What happens on termination, and depending on the negotiating position at the time, he might have been trying to tie that up and make sure that he's watertight and he'll know exactly what he's expecting to get out of it if and when the marriage becomes a divorce. And from Manchester United's side, they'll want to make sure that they'll have had as much discretion, and particularly in termination situations like this where performance is an issue, that they can decide to maybe not treat him as generously as they might have been feeling at the outset of the contract, if actually things turn a little bit sour and they're not particularly happy with how somebody's performed and the embarrassment of them having to leave.
Right, so we understand we know he signed a 6-year contract. We believe he's paid around about £5 million a year. So, even with my basic maths, we're talking about he's owed £25 million. Will he get that much?
It really will depend on the contract. This is not the sort of employment tribunal situation. It really comes down to what's on the paper at the end of the day. And so he might have had a fixed 6-year contract. He's only done 1 year. He's left with the 5. But I mean, I've seen reports that say because Manchester United is not able to get into the Champions League, that might have been a particular clause which allows them to reduce the term that's paid out to just 1 year rather than the 5 that's remaining. So you might have those performance conditions which will adjust what's payable to him. The other option is, even though the default position might be that he's paid out for the remaining 5 years of the contract, that might be paid in stages, and it could be paid not just as a lump sum, but in increments, whether 6 monthly or 1 monthly, and made subject to a reduction in the event that he gets another job. So he might be out of work for a year, then gets a great contract at some European club or the other. The amount he's paid out under this contract could be subject to reduction for any income he has elsewhere. So the top line figure might not be what he actually ends up getting throughout the remainder of the period that this contract should have run.
Fine. Well, I think he's going to be all right for toiletries for a while, don't you? Thank you very much, Romella. Romella Manning-Brown, Senior Associate and Employment Specialist, who handles sports stars and senior executives. So I wouldn't have too much sympathy. Don't cry for me.